Okay, we'll start now. Please join your palms and bow. The four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Amitabha. Good evening to you all, and to all of you who are from Asia listening in. It's already 2/22/2022. So we're only missing one extra two, but you'll have to wait around for it to get to that one, I guess. I don't think any of us will be here if we get to that far. All right. I'm going to continue on with the teachings about the Bodhidharma. Chinese call them Dhamma. Very interesting. There's all sorts of different stories about him, and if you follow anything from Chinese programs, they always have different kinds of what I call hagiography about people, more Hollywoodized or Hong Kongized versions of people. And so the Damo is one of those. The other one is very famous is Sheng, the Monkey King, and we it's difficult for us to separate out what is real and what is not real about Bodhidharma. We know that he was an Indian. There's even a dispute whether he came up from the south or came through the northern routes into China. Most accepted is he came in from the south, and that he brought the Lankavatara with him. He might have brought the Lankavatara, but the Lankavatara was here with Gunabhadra before that. But he emphasized that there's an emphasis on just mind and turning towards the ekayana of mind, and this is important. Last week we talked about how this information is passed from, and not through words and phrases, and I think that that's kind of the hallmark of Chan. I believe the quote that was attributed to Bodhidharma was actually posthumously given to him in terms of it to establish this is the point where Chan originated in China, as to distinguish it from other practices. And in terms of saying there was a Chan school, there wasn't necessarily a Chan school throughout this time period, but various schools practicing very similar methods. And I mentioned before, different places emphasize different sutras just simply because those sutras were able to reach those places. And whatever came in, it was like if you received something there, then you'd play it because it was good, but it was it might have been something that was written several hundred years before, but it's new to you. I remember the very first time I went to China, and this is way back, maybe in the 80s, and there was these two people that were our chauffeurs that were driving us around, and they were playing rock and roll music, and they were so happy to play the music, and it was all music from the 50s, which I loved. I mean, I liked 1950 music, but it was new to them, and they just loved it, and they were playing it, and they were so happy to play it. Look, this is music. They were lucky that they had somebody that was a love 50s music, but I was always just smiling because of the fact that this music was maybe 30 years old, but they were hearing it for the first time. And so it's kind of the same thing when you look at this, except you just put an extra zero on the end of sutras that were coming into China. And so they were hearing the echoes from India, but it was new to them, not bad. And so as they were listening to it, it came in. So when they brought in Lankavatara Sutra, they're going, here's a good one. And they would, because they didn't have a whole lot, they would play that one, play that one, play that one over and over again. And if they were lucky, they were in a hub of activity or a hub of scholars, then they would have the benefit of listening to different sutras or reading different sutras. And so it was interesting. There's two aspects in terms of when Buddhism was introduced to China, because one part was introduced, and it was, let's say, first introduced to scholars and monks, and that's where you get more of this kind of a Huayan Tiantai flavor to it, very, very detailed, very profound type of heavy examination of it. And then there is the other aspect of it, which was changing it to a devotional type of a training. And then you have to remember you're introducing a let's say a so-called religion into an already established, let's say, quasi-religious background of Taoism and Confucianism. And you have to make it something that is marketable, but not just simply to the royal class and to the scholars, but to the indigenous people that are there, that are everyday people. And part of that was, as I had mentioned last week, that when it first came in, they were talking about it as being the statue religion, because they were introducing statues. And so there was that kind of a devotion that was coming in. But Chan fit the bill too, because especially with Bodhidharma, because it was introducing and emphasizing meditation, this wall gazing that we talked about last week. And so this wall gazing is important because it's something that, rather than just simply read a sutra or listen to a sutra or listen to teachings and try to do that, it was actually just slowing down and observing mind. And so this was, in some sense, is very, very novel to be able to now just say, okay, to us, we already take it because when we were born, there was already meditation, people were sitting and whatever. But just imagine you're there, and there's this monk that has his legs crossed, and he's meditating, and you're just going, he's not moving, he's not saying anything. What is happening there? And it's very, very strange. What is he doing? He looks like a statue. Maybe that's why they made the statues, because that's the way you're supposed to sit. All sorts of different things, impressions that were coming up. But here he is right at the let's say the pinpoint, the spear point of this burgeoning study of Buddhism and practice. And so the Chinese really propped him up, made him something very, very powerful, very influential, trying to say that this was Chan Buddhism ground zero, without calling it Chan, but just simply saying that this is the practice. And which it was. And so after a while, it kind of fit, that there was this kind of a practice, not just simply studying Buddhism, but there was a practice, there was something to do. So when I read books about Buddhism, that is my practice as well. But meditation is also this practice that comes into play. It's a little bit different now. It's a little bit different way of looking at it, because it doesn't rely upon words or phrases. it just relies upon mind itself. This is difficult for us because of the habitual tendencies that we want to continue this mind, um, this habitual patterns. And then we find out these habitual patterns are really not our mind. So this is some confusions, but herein lies, right before us from the very beginning, this this doctrine and presentations from Bodhidharma, although they can't really establish, some scholars say, I don't know if he even existed. And there's very little there to show that he existed as a real person. I From what I've read and from I've read from scholarly reports and treatises and things of that nature and theses, I believe there's enough to show that there was a Bodhidharma there. As to how he was and what he was doing and what was hagiography made up, it's hard to say. I don't really care too much about that because I see Bodhidharma as a representation of the dawn of Chan. And so to me, I look at it from the viewpoint of not from a scholar, because if I'm wearing a scholar cap, I have to say, well, we don't have any historicity with him, so we don't know if he really exists. Historicity being proof that he actually did something. Here's a photograph with him and Emperor Wu together, so we knew that they were together. We don't have anything like that to show it. Most of the stuff we have is after the fact, a couple of generations remove. But it doesn't matter because it doesn't dilute the message in terms of what was said, and what was the purpose and what was the training at that point. And that in that time period, contemporaneous, I would say within 2 generations, what he stood for and what they made Bodhidharma stand for. Now, there's stories, I don't know if you know, because they always depict him with his eyes very, very big. And the reason his eyes are very big is because once he fell asleep, and so he cut his eyelids so that he would never sleep again. And you go, oh well, that's like kind of baloney or whatever, but he's represented that way, and you'll see that in the pictures. But then it reminded me of something I was talking to my sister Esther the other day, and about the Guanxin master from Taiwan. And when he was young, he fell asleep and missed the morning boards. He was supposed to sound the morning boards, and he had disappointed the abbot. And from that time on, he never slept. He just sat in a chair and meditated. And so things like that, where you think are like not possible, they are. I mean, this is a contemporary master that did this, and we would think, 200 years from now, 1,000 years from now, oh, that wouldn't have been possible, but it was true. If you had gone to his temple, they still have his temple there. You can still see the little chair that he sat on every night. That he did that, so that it wasn't made up. So it's very, very interesting. Sometimes what we think is true and not true. Even with this master, Guanxin master, they have pictures of when they were carrying his funeral casket to be cremated. There was a beam of light shining directly from the sky onto it, and there's actual pictures of that happened, and also the pictures of a lotus in the sky. And so sometimes these kinds of things kind of defy our logical thinking. So it's hard for me to say, okay, these were made up of these people, because there's firsthand stories that are similar to that. Sometimes it's difficult for us to do that, and certainly scholars have a hard time with those kinds of things in terms of faith, because they're not really charged with having the same faith of what they're studying. And it's kind of interesting because when you see historical scholars, a lot of times you can see their kind of intrinsic prejudice if they're Christian scholars studying Buddhism, because it's hard for them to do that. Heaven forbid they study Christianity, because they would go crazy trying to study that and try to make sense out of that. If you don't believe me, there's a South Carolina professor, Bart Ehrman, that did that for so long. He had some very incredible books on Christianity until he finally decided that he wasn't a Christian anymore because of the too many inconsistencies. Sometimes when you look at it, and I look at it and I see some of the things, I take them, and some things I have to set aside, but I don't completely dismiss it, even if it sounds very incredulous, because I've seen things, realized things, experienced things that before I would think, oh, that's a bunch of baloney. But when you experience it, it's very interesting. I mean, even sometimes the very tiny machinations of things that are going on that we do, and in terms of teaching, just some things are really small, like Sue was at a restaurant. Sue Tan was at a restaurant, and she had and then somebody today gave her a statue of who? Bodhidharma. So, it's very interesting how things work in that way. And actually, once I had been given a statue of Guan Shinpusa and Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, and it was a very interesting statue, but it was packed up, and I knew I had a lot of statues, so I didn't want to put it out and have it broken or something, until one of my friends came by, and I had been giving her some health treatments, and she asked me, you wouldn't happen to have a spare Kuan Yin statue around, would you? And I went, yes, as a matter of fact. And I had just pulled it out that day to say, oh, you know what? I never even opened this one up. And I said, yes, I have it right here. So I brought it down and I opened it up. And lo and behold, the statue was a Japanese rendition of Kuan Yin with pronounced Japanese features. And the person that I was giving the statue to was Japanese. And I knew I would hold this statue until it would call to me to tell me where it's going to find its home. And so things like that are very interesting. You think, are they coincidental or not, that I would open up that box that very day in the morning, and in the evening it found its home. It's very interesting in terms of things, of how mind works. And as you begin to see things, then you're not so quick to say, oh, okay, well, we didn't really know that much about Bodhidharma, so we're not going to give him any credit, or we're not going to do it. No, it's what the statue stands for. With a statue that's there with Japanese facial features, all the more so they're going to make a connection with who it's given with. The same thing with Dhamma. If we have a statue of Dhamma, if we make a connection there, the connection is with mind. And so there's all sorts of different doors, 84,000 doors to come into mind. And so this is what Dhamma stood for, is this ground zero, the beginning. and and the respect was placed there for Dhamma, but also the respect for Chan and the respect for the mind of Chan, the spirit of Chan. That was what was important. That was what was the essence of Chan, not the corporal body of a person, but the what's in the heart, and that's what's important. So when we see this, and I read so many articles about Bodhidharma, and some say no, he didn't come this way, he came that way or this way, and whatever, and I go, okay, as a historian, you're entitled to that, but what he stands for is much greater. Look at Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King, you cannot say he was a perfect man, but he was a perfect representation of what he stood for and what people presented him as this very opening of racial or rights for all people. And when you see that, then that person becomes bigger than the man, more important than the flesh and blood. And that's what Dhamma represented to Chan, was this opening, this beginning of, look, this is how it is. And we're going to show you what Chan is all about by Dhamma, by the other patriarchs that came after him, until finally Huai says, enough. If they haven't got it by the sixth one, they're not going to get it, but we've laid it all out. Now it's time for it. It's like the budding of a lotus flower. And now they say, now let it bloom. And so that's what Dhamma represents. They say that he taught Kung Fu to the Chinese because the Chinese were too weak. And so he built them up at the Shaolin Temple. I'm not sure how much of that he knew and how much Kung Fu he knew. That doesn't matter to me. And if people want to believe that, so be it. But I look at it simply from the presentation of the Dharma, and his presentation is good in spite of the fact that there's very little that was written about him or presented by him. What was there was really the true essence of Chan. And we get to this one part that in almost every single book, I run into this particular story. And I'm sure a lot of you have read it. But I wanted to go over it because this is essentially the essence of what he was presenting here. And it then became a go on as to what did Bodhidharma bring from the East or the West, I imagine in their case, to China. And so, we can look at that question from many different views. Could he have brought anything? And most of them will say if he brought anything, he couldn't even save himself, is what I would say. But the thing is that it is the beginning of let's say, of putting together an integrated program of Chan. And so let's see what it says. Emperor Wu of Liang said, since I came to the throne, now Emperor Lu was a great benefactor of Buddhism in China. And so before he had met the Dhamma, Bodhidharma, he was already a great practitioner. And so what I feel bad about this is they kind of almost give him a bum rap here. And actually in the the Blue Cliff record, and you'll find that it's actually the very first story in the Blue Cliff record is what I'm reading you now. The person giving the commentary makes him out to be a buffoon, but I don't believe that he was buffoon. He was sincerely asking questions. That's why Dhamma was presenting good responses to him, and it was set out in this pattern for us to follow. He wasn't a stupid person. And I kind of almost, when I read the Blue Cliff record, I kind of cringe at that as going, no, you know, you got that wrong. So we continue because this emperor, well, I wanted to tell you who he was because he was so happy to see Dhammo come in. It was like somebody who really liked basketball and was a benefactor of basketball in their country, and then LeBron James comes to be there in their little country, and how he would be received. He would not look at them as these fools. He would look at them and have compassion on them and say, yes, let's see how we can clear this up. But his compassion was the kind of compassion that we see that's a direct compassion. And so later on, and just cutting to the chase, where later on some masters would say, if they were asked, what is the essence of Chan, or what is this, or whatever, they would say, what, you want another cup of slop? You know, saying, I already answered you, and you still don't know. Okay, so here we go. And it says, since I came to the throne, I have built countless temples, copied countless sutras, and given supplies to countless monks. Is there any merit in all this? So he's asking him, is there merit in this? Now, most of you know what the answer to that is. No, and so then this is like, haha, you know, stupid Emperor Wu, you didn't know what the answer was to that. But no, because this emperor with his great compassion survives to deal out this story so many years, no, 1400 years or whatever it was, after he's still being talked about. That's merit. That's pretty good merit. They remember your name. They remember this. And you're part of the story. And it's saying, is there any merit in all this? The master answered, there is no merit at all. So the master is now speaking a different language, switching things up, no longer talking about karma. He's switching it. If you fast forward to Master Ling Chi, Master Ling Chi said, for 12 years, I've been searching for this thing called karma. And I haven't found anything even the size of a mustard seed that could be called karma. What? But yet all the time before that, and even the religions before that, they talked about karma. And now he's saying there's no merit. If there's no merit, then that means there's no karma. He's speaking a different language. He's talking about mind. He's talking about the essence of mind. And so this is a big shift, a quantum shift in the advancement of Bodhidharma. And then the emperor asked him, why is there no merit? So this is interesting because he's looking at it and trying to say, well, before the monks came around and they're always talking about karma. So because they talked about karma, I said, okay, this is good. This is good for me. It's good for my country. It's good for all of the people here, that they should learn Buddhism. And now you're telling me there's no merit. So it's like taking the floor out from underneath the emperor. And the master replied, all these are only small accomplishments of men and gods. So he throws gods in there too. Small accomplishments of men and gods. And we look at it and no, do we really understand that ourselves? That we can look at Emperor Wu and say, Emperor Wu, you were so stupid at that time, period. No. Small accomplishments of men and gods. Gods, they still have a lifespan. We know men have a lifespan. We know women have a lifespan, although they generally get in the last laugh on us. They live a little longer. But these are small accomplishments. And what he's trying to do is show, not to demean sentient beings, not to demean samsaric phenomena, but to show how vast and how great mind is when we compare it. This is what was done in the Heart Sutra when they were talking, the Buddha was talking to Subhuti and saying to him, what do you think, Subhuti, if there was as many Ganges rivers as there are grains of sand in the Ganges River, and all those grains of sand combined equal treasure chests, would the merit of that be great if it was given to the poor? And Subhuti said, oh yes, this would be pretty good merit. This is way beyond what Emperor Wu has done. And yet, not as great as reciting 4 lines of the sutra to someone else. So even all of that, all of Emperor Wu's accomplishments, does not even exceed what I just said to you. The treasure of it. And then you scratch your head and say, I don't know. I mean, I could really use a gold tiara with diamonds in it. No, they could put it on your skull, after you're dead. But this is what he was doing. He was presenting mind. Let me introduce you to mind, not to the glory of the body, the glory of the afterlife, but the glory of mind itself. But he used a very direct, very chop way to do it. So let's go on. And I know a lot of you have read this before. And you just gloss over it and go, oh, okay, let's get on to something else. But you never really feel that. You never see that this is what was being presented as Chan. Okay. They are causes of an outflow which follows them as a shadow follows the body. Although the shadow seems to exist, it is not real. So now he's talking and saying, you are not real. This shadow seems to exist. And he's saying it's not real, which will give rise to another question from Emperor Wu in a moment. And then the emperor asks, then what is true merit? So he's saying, if this isn't merit, because this is the best I can do, and I'm the king. And if the king erects stupas, he feeds the monks, he clothes the monks, he prints or whatever he's doing at that point. I think that was a little bit before printing came in, maybe 100 years after that. But probably, let's see, at least 600 years before the Gutenberg Bible. So I was reading something the other day and on Quora, and somebody asked, what did the Buddhists think about the the Gutenberg printing press. And I would just laugh because I said the Chinese were printing like 600 years before the Gutenberg Bible was ever printed. So they probably said copycats. But in any case, I digress. Sorry. And so he was asking him then that what then is the true merit? The master replied, true merit is a subtle and complete wisdom whose substance is empty and still. So he said, the subtle and pure, complete pure wisdom whose substance is empty and still. That is a lot to tell the emperor. I mean, that is Chan right there. That is mind. He's pointing to mind. All the time, Bodhidharma was pointing to mind, telling, wake up, bring me your mind and I'll quiet it for you. And when he tried to find his own mind, Weka tried to find his own mind, he could not find his own mind. Then it is still, because he was no longer searching within himself for mind. And so here in this statement is this subtle, means that we cannot see it. We look around, we cannot see mind, but everything around it, Shifu used to always say, everything around us testifies to it. Emptiness, impermanence, everything we look at. We see this in this way. The clouds, anything around us, the flowers, impermanent. And we see this. And we're clear about it. So something has to be more than that, because otherwise the flower would never wilt. And this pure wisdom, and the wisdom, what is this wisdom? The wisdom is in awakening to mind, realizing pratika samapada, causes and conditions, realizing everything is connected by virtue of mind, the clarity of the mind itself. This is the pureness of the mind. And he said, empty and still. And this is not something that's easy for anybody to get to. Even this wonderful Emperor Wu, and somebody's telling him empty and still, and all Emperor Wu knows is the vast riches he's given to the Bodhidharma, and it's still, this is not something that he can comprehend. But this kind of merit cannot be pursued according to the ways of the world. So Bodhidharma is telling them, you cannot pursue this according to the ways of the world. So what this means is that if we practice with the idea that we're going to become enlightened, it's not going to happen. We're not going to get anything out of it. We're just this dream. And so we cannot practice in this way. This is why I'm always telling you that the, I call them the 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. I haven't run into 7 yet. 8 and 37. They're all practicing from the viewpoint of samsara, rather than according the mind with these attributes of mind itself. And so that's why you're saying you cannot reach it from this way. It won't work. And so we continue. So this is really good. This is very simple stuff, but you think it's simple, but from the very beginning, it was there from Bodhidharma, or what the composite of Bodhidharma is represented by all of the monks at that time, kind of coming into this confluence of this beautiful practice of Chan. And then the emperor asked the third question. he said, oh, no, actually, it's the fourth question. He says, what is the first principle of the sage truth, absolute truth or pure wisdom? I think, who was it that was asking that question a while back? David, I think it was. Didn't you ask something about the sage truth? But anyway, I responded to him saying there's nothing sage-like about it. But so he's asking, what is this first principle of that? Do you remember there was a Fatang? Let me try to get his name right, because actually he's not far down the road here. Fayung, Fayung. Fayung said, what was the, if we read this and said, what was the first principle? What would he say was the first principle?
Mind.
Mind, right? The first principle is mind. Mind or Buddha nature, same thing. It is just, that is the first principle. So he's asking him, what's the first principle, with this? And so his response is vast emptiness with nothing sage-like in it. And so with this, we look at it and say that it's emptiness, but maybe Emperor couldn't get that at that point. Most of you don't get the idea of what emptiness is. You think it's emptiness like on one of these Star Trek programs when they're way the heck out there, 500 parsecs from Earth, and there's nothing around. But it is in that way. This vast emptiness is actually the infinite mind. And so, and nothing sage-like, because if it was sage, that would mean that there would be something that would be the opposite, but everything is purely acting in accordance right with its right place. So then finally the emperor asked him, because now he's really lost. Remember, he's inviting Dhammo in there to his place and expecting Dhammo is going to say, you're like number one, you're giving out everything, and this is how you do it. And Dhammo's just chopping, not necessarily in a mean way. He's not trying to insult them. He's just speaking as a matter of fact. And the emperor is really stunned. He's stunned so greatly. He doesn't know what's happening. This is bombarding him at one moment. And he's a serious practitioner. Here is this great monk, a Buddhist monk, but he's speaking a completely different language. He doesn't understand this. Yet he knows that this is a great monk. So he really wants to listen to this. But then when he sees it, it's like, hey, is this a joke? Am I on candid camera? Is this like fake or whatever? There's too much. I can't, my mind cannot hold it, but it's because his reasonable cogitation, reasonable thinking has just blown up. And it is precisely what Dhammo wanted to happen to him, is to just take everything away. So he took away the throne, he took away the carpet, he took away the palace floor. There was nothing suspending the emperor at that point. He was so mind boggled. And so then he asked him, like, who is this before me? Who are you? And the master said, I don't know. Wow, everything he answered impeccably with subtle wisdom, but it literally just shattered that throne room. That's why he's number one. That's why he's portrayed to be number one. because if you're going to start, you got to start with your best player, and that was him. And that's why everything is propped up around Bodhidharma, and shown that this was the one that stands for what Chan stands for, beyond words and phrases. That's why they use that statement, so that people can read it and say, a special transmission outside the scriptures, not founded upon words and letters, but pointing directly to mind. It lets one see into the true nature and thus attain Buddhahood. And so this kind of a presentation is one in which it represents Chan as its most basic, and Chan as its most wondrous. And this idea that it is beyond words and letters, meaning it is beyond anything conceptual. So when we talk about words and letters, it's not just simply limited to words and letters, because we could say like river, mountain, but it's beyond any kind of conception. What is beyond conception? It's non-conceptual. It is the non-conceptual awareness of mind itself. I've been hitting on awareness for a few days and a few lectures, but this is where it fits, this non-conceptual awareness. How do we attune to this non-conceptual awareness? By not thinking. How do we not think? By not thinking. And it seems like it's kind of like a circular argument, but it's really not. From this side, from samsara, none of it can make any sense. It is what I always am talking to you and telling you, you need to jump into the void. You need to go beyond the words and letters, to feel what is there. And if you can do that, if you can feel what is meant by this, then this is the awareness of the mind. This is the wisdom of the mind. It is the knowing aspect of the mind. This knowing aspect of the mind, or we could call it mind perception, is not the same knowing or perception within samsara. It would be like if I made this little mechanical robot that would follow me around, and it would mimic what I'm doing, and whatever, would that be a human being? No. It's limited to what information that was put into it at that point, but it doesn't have the ability. It doesn't have the ability to create. Really contemplate that. You think you have the ability to create. You can make babies, you can have things, but can you create? Can you really create? Did you think about making up a baby? No, it just happened. I was there, I wasn't doing anything, poof, and a baby came out. We don't know how to do that. Scientists are just getting down to the DNA and all the other things that were there, but they don't know that. Shifu used to say, scientists can tell you how you were born, but they can't tell you why you were born. It's very interesting. We only know what's known within samsara, but we do not create. Although it is the greatest deception of the illusory being, sentient being, that brings about this idea that we have this ability to create. We certainly can create gods, and there's gods. But was it us that created them, or was it mind? Once we begin to separate out what the ancient writings said, the wheat from the chaff, we don't have to throw away the chaff. We just have to concentrate on the wheat, and then we begin to see things clearer because the chaff doesn't get in the way. Mind, remember, all Dharma, Dhatu, nature is created by the mind. And this is how it is. This is what Dhamma was presenting. This is what he stands for in this. Before we get even to wake up, Sasan, we've got to see what is represented here. This is the blooming of Chan, the opening of the flower of Chan. And when we see that, we see things from a much different viewpoint, this idea of this Dharma Dhatu. And so this is what Dhammo is explaining to him so that he's not unclear about it. Just simply saying, I don't know who's before me, because if you're asking me as a human, I wouldn't know. If mind, he could say a dream. A dream asking a dream about a dream. But he's giving him his best. In the very first meeting, he's giving him the essence of Chan. And this is very, very important in terms of that. After that, I'm going to digress into Dharma Dhatu, but I think I'll keep going here. The things that he had provided, essentially, we talked about the Lankavatara, and there were, he's known for espousing two entrances and 4 practices. And this is what essentially is his ideas of Chan. And it says that we can understand the essence through reading the scriptures, but one must believe that all beings have the same true nature, a nature which is not fully revealed because obscured by guest dust affliction and confused by ideas. And so, but if we and it says, when one abandons false and returns to the true, concentrating on contemplation while facing a wall without self, without others, common and sagely are made into one. When one dwells on this without being moved by other teachings, then one can be deeply in accord with the way. This is called entrance by principle. And this is that we do not take the scriptures, the sutras, to be to be the means to an end. They, or I shouldn't say, yeah, they're a means to an end. Essentially, they're a means to an end rather than the end. We see them as a way of practicing into it so that we use it. And this is why I always say, when you're meditating, you use your practice, you use what has been taught to serve as your foundation of your practice. So you will not be deceived when you sit to meditate. You will know exactly what is going to happen when you're sitting there. And some people say, yeah, I remember Gilbert said, it's going to be this way. This is going to happen. This, and sure enough, it happens. Later on, they don't have to rely on me. They just know this is what happens. If you close your eyes, images appear. None of those images apply to that moment. There's nothing that's coming through visually in your mind that has anything to do with that moment. You're just sitting. And if you have feelings of your body, it's okay. You just simply realize that those are naturally appearing. Everything that comes up is naturally appearing. All of the imagery in the mind, all of the mental sensation, all of the emotions. Ah, it's the emotions that are the tricky ones sometimes. You can get rid of everything else and you can be sitting there trying to meditate. And what happens? It goes, I'm bored, I'm hungry, whatever, or this is stupid, or can be anything that comes up as an emotion because we think that we've already banished any mental impressions, but they're going King's X on emotions, those can come up at any time. No, you have to see that that's movement in the mind. So how can you see if something is moving in the mind? Anybody know? It's so obvious. Nobody can see the obvious. How can you tell? I'll give you a hint. Okay. What do you see when your eyes are closed?
The eyelids?
Yeah, the back of your eyelids, right? Okay. How do you see movement in the mind? By being still. If you're still, then the images will arise naturally because
Yeah,
they're
okay, I
there.
see that. Yeah.
And so as these images arise naturally, you leave them alone. You are only focused on the stillness of the mind. So you abide with the Buddha mind in the present moment. All of these things are naturally there, percolating their way through. They were there because of habitual tendencies, but it has nothing to do with you. You're not going to get extra credit for not seeing them or for pushing them away. It's just natural. So if you want to be closer to the true practice, see everything as naturally appearing. Don't think, oh, why did this have to happen to me? Why is this? Why is that? You just see things as they really are and as they're appearing, and then you will see it in the right way. Now, the other method to enter is by practice, and he mentions 4 practices. I'm going to mention them very quickly. The first one is to practice requital of hatred. That's to essentially accept karma, accept the things that are happening, accept and see that these are all connected versus cause and conditions. You should not be trying to damn your fortune or your fate or whatever. Those things are just occurring as they are. No, most assuredly, a pimple coming up on the face of a young girl going to her first prom is karma sometimes. And it's just the way it is. They think it's the end of the world. It's second to the end of the world, but it's something that happens. And if we can't deal with that, and you go, I'm a teenager, I've got my hormones on high alert, and I'm going to the prom and I'm nervous, and poof, of course that's going to happen. But try to tell a teenager that you can't. Try to tell an adult why they can't stop drinking or why nobody likes them because they can't stop drinking. And then they don't understand that. But when we understand it, that's one of the practices. Another practice is acceptance of conditions. And again, this is very close to the other one. And it's just saying, you just accept the things that are coming up, that are arising. And moment to moment, you get a flat tire. You get an A. You get a raise. You get fired. You meet a girl. A girl leaves you. A man leaves you. No, whatever it is, all these things are coming up. You just try to hang with it and just understand that this is the samsaric world. And the third is non-attachment. So these are all very, very similar. So we don't attach to these things, because as soon as we start attaching to things, then they cause problems. If we like the taste of beer, maybe tomorrow you'll like the taste of beer twice, and then three times. And then after a while, you like that more than your job. Or any kind of attachments that come up. I'm not banging on alcoholics today. I'll switch it over to drugs or donuts in a moment. And the fourth is to accord with the Dharma. And this is the one that helped me the most. And to accord with the Dharma is just simply seeing everything as naturally happening. It's natural. It's natural that this person will be angry at this time, because this is what they normally do in these situations. It's natural that this person will be taken advantage of, because this person's a taker and this person can't see that. And you see those things happening all the time, all sorts of different things that are natural. It's, people go, oh, it's so hot. Oh, I'm so hot. I'm going, it's August. No, at least be glad that that our seasons are still right. If it's like hot and it's in January, then, well, that's us now with global warming. That's natural too. We forgot about the environment. So in any case, everything is in this way. If you look around, what I would like you to do this week is, I would really like you to look around at everything that you see, and just see, is it natural? And see what the conditions are of why that's happening. You'll be so surprised. It's as if you were you couldn't see, and then all of a sudden you could see. It was like, I always thank Shifu from taking the cataracts out of my eyes, because that's the way it was. When I went to college, and I realized, or the people around me realized that I couldn't see well. I didn't know. I had no idea what sight was. I was poor. We couldn't afford to go to an optometrist or have glasses. I was really, really poor. And so when I went to UCLA, they actually gave us free medical. And so I was able to get glasses. After I got the glasses, I looked all around at everything. There were stars in the sky, these little bright lights. I'd never seen them before. I thought green lights and red lights were fuzzy balls. And so all of these things, I was so surprised. When you practice Chan in the true way and see things naturally, you will be so surprised, because your eyes will be wide open. You'll be so amazed at everything that you see, because it's as if you have these little pop-up things coming up and saying, this is Gilbert. He's wearing black today. He always wears black, or whatever. These little pop-ups that go all over the place, and he goes, this is Gilbert. He has just one hair that just goes like this, that he puts on the top of his head and tries to make it look like he has hair, or whatever it is. But it's like these little pop-ups that pop up, and you see clearly the things around you. This is so-and-so. They're about to throw a tantrum because such and such and such. And so then you see these things, and it gives you insight as to how to react in the next moment. And then the last thing that he talked about, which we talked about last week, was wall contemplation. And it says that at first the master lived in Shaolin Temple for 9 years and taught the second patriarch, Weka, externally keep yourself separate from all conditions. Internally, there is no tremor in your heart. So in other words, saying, when you keep yourself separate from it, it means you don't attach to the conditions. And inside, you're not shaking from anything. You're very still. So whatever happens, you deal with it. I mean, it is what it is, and you just have to deal with it. And that's life: birth, death, sickness, all sorts of stuff that is there. And so when you see things in that way, you're clear about the world. This contemplation enables you to be able to discern by practicing when there's nothing to see. And then you already discern that things are arising. After a while, they arise few and less frequently, and with less intensity. But then when you get up and you look at things, then you see everything is perfectly in its place, impeccably in its place. So this is Bodhidharma. I wanted to introduce him to you. You've heard of him many times, but you didn't really understand the true essence of what he means to Chan. So thank you for listening to me today. So Amitofo, answer questions. Ikai.
Hi, Gilbert. So when you say see everything happen naturally, let's say if I observe that I become very angry, is that considered natural?
Oh, yes, most assuredly. Before you became angry, you didn't see the mental state changing. Because before you became angry, you weren't angry, but you were unable to discern that all of a sudden this mental state is arising in mind. It didn't belong to you. It's connected with the causes and conditions, and the causes and conditions that if something that frustrates you or isn't to your pleasure, it will cause you anger. And so
Now, when I,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
So when I aware that I am angry, okay, so should I stop it or keep angry?
No, once you
Or
recognize that you're angry, it would be foolish to stay angry. What I do is I start reciting the Buddha's name, and it's hard to stay angry when you're reciting the Buddha's name. Namo Amitofu, Namo Amitofu, Namo. You can't do it like that, right? It has to be Namo Amitofu, and that will bring you back. You will gain control. And try it if you don't believe me. It really works. Gilbert's promise. Okay, it works. But don't stay angry, because staying angry at that point, once you recognize it, then it's that would be sad. That's what people do all the time. They like to be angry, and then you touch them. It's okay. Get off of me. I want to stay angry. I want to stay unhappy. Why? Because that's what they do all the time. It's habitual. Oh my gosh. Then then you have to leave and wait for them to change their mental state. Okay.
right.
But when you know that, then you don't touch the person when they're angry, because they're just going to do that.
Right. So I remember a couple years ago when I started to kind of aware my status. Well, for a moment, I felt something strange, that as if I aware that I am angry, and as if there were two different people. And one is aware.
Yes, it's very interesting. One Rinpoche, a Tibetan master, was talking about this, and he would say that at some point as you practice, you'll become aware as if there were two, and one that's the knower or the seer, and the one that is in the picture, in moving around. They're all mine. We just don't understand that. But what you're doing is you're using the mind's own perception to see your illusory mind, the five aggregates, everything that's all coming together at that moment. But your knowing mind is perceiving that. So there's a bit of a disorientation there, because you go, which one should I do? And your illusory mind says, don't pay attention to them. You can't even see them. Let them go away. Let's stay angry. Okay, we're going to stay angry. and the knowing mind just says, this is foolish. But it's all because of causes and conditions. If I calm down, the whole scene's going to calm down. So yeah, that's how it works. So just keep practicing in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ron Chin.
Amitabha.
Amitabha.
So I'm curious. I mean, why couldn't Dharma deliver Emperor Liang? Because in the subsequent story of the platform story, Huiren actually used many occasions to deliver even the one who wanted to kill him. So that's many ways. So I wonder, where's the compassion of Dharma when he could probably turn the whole thing around?
You're seeing it from the opposite end of the telescope. So everything appears so very small. But if you turn it around, you'll see how this exchange between Emperor Wu and Damo is used to even this day to spread the Dharma. This is much more valuable than trying to deliver an individual. It doesn't say anything about that whether Emperor Wu was not delivered after that. It's kind of interesting because we only got this little snippet, but the idea was that Emperor Wu was too dull or too much or too stupid to be able to do that. But it isn't necessarily the case. We don't know what happened afterwards unless you have something that, like a biography on Emperor Wu. I'd love to hear it, if it's there. But we cannot presume that Emperor Wu didn't listen to him. I think that that's something that to me I accepted from the reading, was that he was blown away. But being blown away, you would be stupid just to go, okay, well, he doesn't have the answer, so get him out of the palace. I wouldn't think it would have been that way. But I think it's the function of the presentation that's valuable. And certainly if Emperor Wu had the ability and the sincerity that they professed in the beginning that he had, then I think that he would have made great progress in Bodhidharma by listening to this, because he would, just like you, it would whet your appetite. And as soon as you hear that, you want to hear more and more. I remember driving up to DDRC with you, or you were driving me up, and you asked me question after question after question after question, and it didn't turn you away. It made you thirstier for the Bodhidharma, and here you are. And the questions were very basic questions, but it was okay because it was the opportunity. You had a very good opportunity, affinity with me in that drive to do that. And so I think that you'd have to presume that he went along the same way as you did. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, David.
Well, thank you, Gilbert. I'd like to ask a basic question here. You mentioned about being still so that one can see movement in mind. And that's something that I have a real struggle with. And I guess what I'm asking is that where one uses the method, say like silent illumination, to become still?
The thing is when we use methods with that kind of a idea, we really suck the life force out of the method, because we're trying to attach and we're trying to reach a mental state that would enable us to do this. The mind is not a mental state. Mental states appear in mind. Consciousness appears in mind, but mind is silent by its nature. And all we want to do is just be silent So that enables us to be able to awaken to our true nature. But the very fact of sitting on our cushion and not talking is not enough. And then saying, if I sit here and I get enough seat time in, I will get my sky pilot license, and I'll be able to talk to people about all sorts of profound things. No, it is just a means of parking the body so that the mind can take a rest. Taking a rest, it will naturally reveal and awaken. But if we sit with this kind of an idea or try to create the idea that it is a mental state, that's where we make a mistake. Okay, you have to be very, very careful about that. You're right now, and why you're like always balancing between these two things. It's okay. You should be there. That it makes you feel a little bit unstable, a little bit uncomfortable. I use Robert because Robert was where you were at, and he was that way all the time. Now every once in a while he'll go half cockeyed or parrot-eyed, but most of the time he's more stable with this. No, he just can't be so literal, and he has to really look at it. But your questions, there is no thing as a stupid question, because there's just adjustments, and so a stupid question is one that's made by a smart person. Okay, so remember that.
Thank you.
All right, I boosted your ego too much. Stupid, go away. Yes, Shane, you want to ask me a question about side illumination?
No, I think you might have already answered my question. Let me ask anyway.
Okay.
That you mentioned many times that just jump. I was wondering, in this body, this red meat really have this power to decide when to jump. But it seems to me that this body actually have to make a lot of effort to stay still and just stay there. This patient did wait that hold of mind. No, it's not like I can decide when to. This body can use the brain, the conscious to decide when to jump. This I have to make a lot of effort to stay still, stay there. Constantly remind myself, patiently, just wait, just stay there. This train, this mind train, just all of a sudden, once in a while, it just shoot, just want to you up, suck you in. It has nothing to do with this body. I cannot decide. I cannot just jump. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
It's like, no, you cannot get, you have to wait there.
Yeah, your voice was breaking up a little bit, but I got the essence of what you're saying. I think that you're doing it in the wrong way. You're putting too much pressure. You don't have to make Jane go away. You just have to understand Jane. Shifu, he said, for us to let go of the self, first we have to understand the self. And so the best way to understand is to see, really see what has happened. And this seeing is to see everything that's around. But you should practice like this, okay? And you're just barely holding on. You ratchet back your emotions. Ratcheting back means pulling back your emotions. Let them calm down. Don't be too excited. Don't be too excited. Let's say you won a prize and you're like, yeah, I'm so happy I won the prize, whatever. Or that you lost a prize. I lost a prize. I never win. You don't do those things. You try to maintain an even course, the middle ground. Always remember middle, just the Madhyamika, being in the middle. And don't get too excited and don't get too disappointed or too anxious or whatever. just maintain. You don't have to change the world to shades of gray. You just simply have to see why the colors are the way they are. And then you see the things in this way, that you will see the world, it changes, and you see even the colors change, and the way that you see the world, and how all of a sudden you are seeing things 10 seconds, a minute, an hour, a day before other people. How is that? Because you calm yourself down. So your awareness can expand. It expands to the past, it expands to the future. It brightens up the present moment. But the only way that that can happen is that if you maintain a very quiet demeanor. If you get too excited, you lose that ability to do that. The last night I was watching the All-Stars play, and there was this one player, Stephen Curry, very good basketball. Everything he shot, it went in. It was amazing. I mean, he was shooting the ball from almost half court and making it. And then I saw one time he missed, and I went, this is the end of it. And after that, he made only maybe a couple more, but he missed most of his shots because he lost that zone he was in, where in that zone, he and the basket were perfectly in line. And he could not miss, just simply because it was that way. And the same thing with you. But if you lose that grip on the present moment, then you start sliding this way and sliding that way. You're not clear about it, like what Master Ling Chi used to say, that the wind will blow you this way or blow you that way without you having any control. But if you maintain and be very quiet in the present moment, it will work. Okay, you don't have to think about, hey, it's working. Like the player, he started thinking, hey, but then if I miss, what have I missed? And then as soon as he mistrusted his feeling, then he lost it. And so the thing is that with you just keep staying. The more you stay in the present moment, the perfect practice, then it will work. Okay, you can do it. I know you can do it. Okay, and you start doing that when you're sitting in silent illumination. When you're sitting in silent illumination, you sit there. You're not worrying about what's arising in the mind. You're just concerned of staying in silent illumination, meaning that whatever arises, let it go. Just let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, because it has nothing to do with you in that moment. So you practice, how would you say, diffusing the bombs around you, so they don't start blowing up around you. When you see these things in your meditation, you can easily let them go when you're standing up and moving around. Okay, try that. Okay, Ching. Oh,
I'm sorry.
good.
Hello,
Okay.
Gilbert. I have a few questions about methods, 话头. So what kind of question can be used as 话头? Is the question has an answer, or the question without an answer? Or can be any kind of question be used as 话头, or only certain kinds of question can be used as 话头?
I'd have to give a whole lecture on Hua To to do that. And one day I'll go back and I will do silent illumination and Hua To practices and discuss those in detail. So thank you for reminding me that, both of you, Jane and Ching. And with this, Master Sheng had used what is Wu as the one that he wanted people to go to. To me, I think that it's one that speaks to you. Could be who is dragging this corpse around, or who is reciting the Buddha's name. Don't use who am I. I really detest that one. The reason I detest who am I is because you're constantly creating a habitual pattern of the I when you say, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Even though you may not find out who you are, if it's used wrong, it won't work right. It's better to use something that's, it doesn't matter. The Huatos are unanswerable, okay? What the ancients call meaningless Huato. You're not searching for the answer in the words. That if you find the answer in the words or anything, it's worthless. A Huato doesn't work that way. A Huato works in a manner in which it is putting the mind before the thought comes out, and it keeps putting the mind where the thought is coming out. There's only one thought. We'll say, what is Wu? Actually, I like who is reciting the Buddha's name. But let's say we use who is reciting the Buddha's name. So I said, who is reciting the Buddha's name? Boom. And then right away, I jump to the beginning before it comes out of the mind ground and try to wait for the question to come out. But the question will come out too quickly in the beginning because you're not used to this. But eventually the mind becomes more and more settled and it will slow down. And the time between asking the question and finishing the question and returning to the point of where the thought comes out begins to expand or appear to expand. It's just simply the mind is now so unobstructed that it can immediately go to that point. And then it's watching as the question comes out. It is watching the question come out. It's no longer hearing the question or visualizing the question, who is reciting the Buddha's name? It is right there melded with the question itself, understanding the question is appearing in mind and comes from mind. And as you watch it just sink, who is reciting the Buddha's name? Who is reciting the Buddha's name? Back into mind, coming out of mind and then back in, just for a moment, like a flash. This is how you use the Huato. Huato means before the word. So always put your attention before the word, and then it will work.
So then when you use Huato, should you say the Huato loud, or should you just move your mouth without make a sound, or should you just say it quietly, just in your mind, in your mind, really not doesn't move your mouth, does not make a sound, but just observing, sort of say in your heart. So how do you, or do you say that Huato throughout? Like if I do 1 hour meditation, do I say that Huato from the beginning to the end, or just use at the beginning? So how do you really like use it? So one is say it loud, one is move your mouth, but it doesn't make a sound, or say it quietly, doesn't even move your mouth.
Better to think about it rather than to audibilize or move your lips or anything. Just think of the question arising in the mind, and do it in that way. Then it will work fine. You use the Huato continuously. And if you're using the hard Huato, let's say at a retreat, you would use it even when you're not sitting. If you're drinking water, who is reciting the Buddha's name? If you're brushing your teeth, who is reciting the Buddha's name? If you're walking, who is reciting the Buddha's name? You just use it nonstop. Okay. If you're using it as a soft Huato, then you can use it. But a soft Huato is also very good because it will generate its own habitual tendencies and energy to arise in the mind without you even bringing it up. And it will come up. And then you just jump on the train and just use it. It's a reminder, and then you use it until you forget, and then it will come up again naturally. It's a very powerful method to use if it's used properly. So that's about all I can tell you for this time. And we will go through and visit Owato. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, for today.
Thank you.
Ikai, you got second.
Sorry, I have to raise this same question again, as it's not very clear to me the difference or the relationship between when things happening naturally versus that we have to control, have to apply the method. Now, what I can think of is that when a phenomenon or a thought arise naturally because of the causes and the conditions, it is natural. Everything happened after that is our attachment, which is unnatural. And the reason that we have to control or we have to apply the method is because of the unnatural that happened after the first phenomenon or thought that arise naturally. Is my understanding correct?
I think it's a little bit off because whatever is arising in the mind is, given your definition, also an unnatural thought that was a previous unnatural thought that gave rise to the phenomena appearing. When we see things just simply as natural, understand that it's natural, that it's following the laws of Pratika Samappada, so that it's perfectly in harmony with that, even though it is let's say a foul thought or an angry thought. We see that as Pratika Samappada, cause and condition never fail. You know, when you see this person that you really don't like, of course you're going to have that feeling come up. Oh my God, I can't believe that person's here. You know, what do they want, or what are they after? That's going to naturally come up in your mind. It happens perfectly and purely. So when we purify the mind, it doesn't mean that we sanitize the mind, that only good thoughts can arise. We see things arising in accordance with causes and conditions. We know why they come up, and that's important. It is what we do as they're arising via body, speech, and mind that makes the difference. That's why I've been emphasizing body, speech, and mind, because that is the practice in the present moment. What do we do? You choose. You choose to hold on to that. You understand that this thought's arising naturally because I've been angry at that person, but I choose not to be angry at that person. I will transfer merit to that person. It may not pay off right away, but sooner or later it will pay off. Things will happen in a better way. Karma is something that even if something bad happened to our enemy, is not good for us. Although we may think that, but it's not good, because we had summoned so much anger and mind power to make your enemy suffer, but you too will suffer in the future. It has to pay off in the reverse. So it's like drinking salt water to satiate your thirst for revenge. You'll only get thirstier. And so you have to see things as they are. We do not see it neither sacred nor profane. You know, it's not something in that way. We see it just as it is. And if we see this way, it changes the way we deal and changes our choice. We choose wisdom. And the wisdom is that what we do with body, speech, and mind in the present moment. It's very, very important. If you try that this week and see, and you'll see there's a change. I mean, if you sincerely practice in this way, I'm talking to all of you, if you sincerely practice in this way, you'll see a change. Even within 1 week, it will work. It's like me trying to sell you some spot remover, right? And I can only spray one little area of your rug, and I rub it like that. And you say, see how clean? You thought your carpet was beige, but it's actually white. You know, when was the last time you cleaned your carpet? So just clean. You don't wipe away the stuff. What you do is you clean it by choosing the Buddha mind moment to moment. And it will be self-cleaning. You don't have to get down on your hands and knees to clean it. It will all of a sudden become clean. Okay.
I see. So from what you just told me, I revised my understanding to be so the important thing here is to aware. When you're aware, everything happens naturally, and as long as you're aware. And the reason we need to control or we need to apply the method is because we don't aware. And to control and using the method, we become aware.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank
it.
you.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance with the Connecticut group on the weekend to go into that aspect of what I wanted to talk about, but you're picking it up tonight, so that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, I think
Thank
that's it. We've gotten quite a ways. We'll pick it up next week and we'll see. I may continue on with this line onto the next patriarch or switch to something else. I'll see how it plays out over the week. But thank you all for listening. I'm really happy to present this on Bodhidharma because I think there's so little that was written about him, but it was important, you know, to show his place in this, in all of this of where he is essentially kind of the fountainhead of the Chan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you, Gilbert.